Before we get into today's video, I just wanted to say that we hit 10 subscribers. Yeah, that's super cool. I honestly thought it would take a couple videos to kind of get to that little milestone. However, we got it on the first video, so thank you guys for supporting me during my journey, and let's get into today's video. This is the sketchbook that I use. I don't know if it's a good one. It was $12.49, so it was good to my wallet. I really liked this idea. However, I don't think I want all of the flowers on one canvas just yet. I want to work up to that. I want to really hone in on each individual flower and figure out their personality types, because these are actually going to be characters. We have the option between this canvas right now, and honestly, this one's the one that's gotta go. I've had this canvas since earlier this year. I'm talking like Q1. That's a little dramatic. I've had it since Q2 of this year, Q2. And originally, the look I was going for was very Little Nightmare-esque, you know? If you remember the scene where they're going through the school and they meet that crazy, wacky teacher and all of them little badass kids, that's where this scene comes from. All right, so we have still some cheap paint that we'll be using as like a base, and honestly for a lot of the bottom layers. But the more that we get into the piece, I have a couple other like higher tier paints, not that much higher tier, but definitely better than dollar store paint to actually like fill out the canvas. It's my little art station. It looks super cute. Anyway, the first time I ever painted over any of my work, I was in high school. And it was against my will. Actually, the teacher painted over my work. And when he covered up a good amount of it, then he told me, he was like, okay, cover up the rest. And I did. And ever since then, I hated art teachers. I'm kidding. Kind of, somewhat. It truly does depend on the teacher. I think that a lot of my art teachers were great artists, but terrible teachers. And if you're gonna be an art teacher, you gotta know how to teach. Like, that's just rule number one. But I think as a kid, as a young teen, I let that affect my mental more than it should have. Now we fast forward a bunch of years and we're here, and I'm painting over one of my old works. And while I still do stand by the fact that I low-key think that was high-key disrespectful, I do think that you do have to be comfortable with learning when to pivot, when to let go of a work that you have and put something else on it, make something new. I was never going to finish this work. Other projects come up, life comes up, and you forget about it. Time to paint over it. Time to learn. I think a lot of people are afraid of change because of sunk cost fallacy, where it's like you've already put so much time and effort into this, so why would you quit now? To counteract that point, not knowing when to quit is quitting on yourself. Not knowing when to quit and hanging on to something just because you don't want to readjust and re-strategize because you feel like embarrassed or ashamed of it is really only failing and giving up on yourself. And this goes for anything. This goes for jobs, school, relationships, friendships. Like, you gotta know when to really be like, okay, this is not serving me anymore. I have to readjust. Each day is a brand new day, right? So therefore, you have a chance to be a completely new person every single day. Is everything in your life right now currently serving you? And what if it wasn't? Then what? Right. Exactly. This right here, you're watching a pivot in real time. You're watching a pivot in real time, and you're welcome. You're welcome for that. When I'm a famous artist in my own studio one day that isn't my bedroom, and I'm, super successful and all of that, then this video will truly make sense, because I'm pivoting. Pivot! The Ross clip. That's what I'm thinking of.
Here we go. Pivot. Pivot. Pivot.
And I'm in my early 20s. So this is like one of the first times in my life where I've had to make a major change. Because prior to that, I was kind of just going with the flow. I was just kind of like, man, whatever the nearest adult says, I'll listen. Before I forget, this is the paint that we're using right now. It's Liquitex Basic Acrylic, but as you can see, these shit's tiny as fuck. And they're expensive as hell too. And the craziest part is that's still like intermediate. It's not even it's not even expensive paint for real, but it's expensive paint for real, if you get what I mean. But at the end of the day, no one can make your choices for you. Every choice that you make in life is something that you decided yourself. If I decide, you know what, I give up. I'm gonna quit this YouTube thing for real. I'm not gonna give it any more effort behind it. And instead, I'm gonna spend my free time playing video games, because I really love video games. It's one of my hobbies. So like, imagine I just gave it all up and I was like, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna just game instead. And then, 2 years down the line, I'm in my what if stage, that stage of regret. Not saying that 2 years from now would be too late for me to be chasing my dreams, but it's definitely later than it is now, right? So I'm over here sitting in my regret. Ain't no one to blame but me. Ain't no one make me put the camera down. Ain't no one detach this fucking mic off of my neck. Like, no one did that. I did. So it's like, you really gotta be ready to take control of your life. Change comes with so much, right? You don't know for certain what that change could bring, because although we have the foresight to predict and make educated guesses, none of that matters at the end of the day, because life is going life regardless, right? And I think that's why we're all so scared of changing and figuring things out. From childhood, you're kind of like, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And it's like, when you're a child, you could say something like, oh, firefighter. When you get to, I want to say high school, for real, because that's when everyone's like, you have to make the decision of what college you want to go to, and that will change your life forever, and what major, and you have to pick your life right now. And I think that's the first time that people get oh my gosh, things are going to change. Things are going to be different. I have to figure something out. And you do, but we don't have to stick with it. And I feel like we're so obsessed with first trying everything. I feel like failure is such a big fear amongst people. But like I said earlier, you're only failing yourself when you decide to stick around and do something that doesn't serve you. Because what you're really doing is you're putting other people's needs, wants, and desires before your own. And you can't be doing that. But let's say that you do have a moment in time where you're like, this just doesn't feel right. I don't feel served. I don't feel like I'm truly living my life for myself, you have to. You have to. At the end of the day, you can have reasons to live outside of yourself, obviously. But at the end of the day, you're really just living for yourself. In order to have like a successful change in your life, you have to be able to give yourself grace, right? And so when going back to that topic of when you have to pivot, when you have to change, you kind of feel like a failure because it's like, damn it, why didn't I do right the first time? You have to be able to step back and be like, this did not work out for me, and that is okay. Once you start beating yourself up for things not working out for you, then that's when like everything falls apart. So what if one thing didn't work out for you and you thought it did? Yeah, that sucks, but I mean, the world ain't over. The world is still spinning. I'm on this bitch. It's still spinning. When you start looking at life as a huge lesson as opposed to a competition, right? Things change so much. This is everybody's first time on Earth. And some people are able to have a more clear like guideline of what they want to do and who they want to be, and they have the right support systems in place to allow for that. But most people don't. So it's like, are you willing to give yourself that grace and be like, you know what? This wasn't the right choice. And that's okay. And if y'all are anything like me, I'm super driven. I'm super like, I have a goal. I lock in on it. I'm like, I want that. I'm going to achieve that, right? And I feel like I'm gonna attract a bunch of go-getters, ambitious people watching this video that just hold themselves back because of that pivot. That change is just too scary. Do it, y'all. If I were to take you right now and be like, all right, bet on yourself. Tell me one thing about you and bet on yourself, right? So for me, it'd be, I'm betting on myself that my art and my videos will reach a demographic that relates to me and gets me, and I want to be able to create a safe community here, right? That's what my goal is, right? So if someone was like, how much you want to bet on that? I'm betting my life. Yeah, it's that serious. It's that serious. You have to be able to be your biggest fan, right? And I know that's rough because you're also your worst enemy, your worst critic, right? So how can you be both your biggest fan and your biggest critic? How does that work? Simple. You do both. You do it both, literally. Even if you don't believe yourself, like you just do it. Sometimes you gotta wake up and be like, I'm that raw. And soon enough, you will be that raw. You're always going to have more haters than lovers, right? And when I say haters, I don't mean like for real, like people actively like rooting on your downfall on some Dr. Doofenshmirtz type beat. Like, no, I don't mean like that. But I mean, there are over 7 billion people in this world. Most of them don't know you. Most of them don't, right? And so when it comes to advocating for yourself outside of your support group that you have, whether that be your friends, your relationship, or your family, no one else is really gonna be rooting for you. And sometimes people don't even have that. So it's like, you have to start getting used to advocating for yourself, or you're not gonna get most things in life. I do wanna mention that obviously a lot of people can't up and leave their jobs. A lot of people can't up and leave a relationship. A lot of people just can't get started on their hobbies tomorrow. Like, all of these things are like stuff that needs to be planned and thought out. And if you're able to drop everything and do that without a plan, then you're incredibly privileged. But don't anchor your life to what is right now. When you're stuck in the this is what is and not this is what it'll be, you're always going to be in the present. And nothing's wrong with being in the present. You know, you need to learn to live and exist in your present. But that's the thing, you need to have a plan. You just can't say, oh, I want to do this. That's not a plan, hun. That's a wish list. We want a plan. We want a solid plan, right? And shit, it may take some time. It may take months. It may take years. But that's okay. Because time will pass anyway. And you might as well spend that time working towards something you love than staying in a situation you hate. Or maybe it's not that deep.